Welcome into the Alabama Bass Trail podcast presented by Phoenix Boats. I'm Kay Donaldson, the director of the Alabama Bass Trail and your host for this week's podcast. This is your post ABT 100, your post inauguration, and your post It Snowed at the Beach podcast. I know we're a day late and I apologize for that, but honestly, and I'm just going to be transparent. MLK Day, Inauguration Day, everybody's off work. Kids are out of school, everything. And it's so cold. Everyone is in their house and everyone's using the internet. And honestly, I could not stay on stable internet long enough to record this podcast on Monday. So I apologize for that. It was not because I wasn't here. I was actually working and doing checks and all of that. The internet was just not stable enough for me to try to squeak through a podcast. And I didn't want our guests to come on and it be not good and inconvenience them and ask them to come back. So we punted and we're recording on Tuesday, the 21st of January. This will go up on Wednesday. I do apologize, kind of, but anytime you can get a cold day and have everybody at home and watching movies or watching the inauguration or whatever else you were doing, that's a good day. So I am not a cold weather fan. So Mother Nature, if you would, just take your Arctic freeze, polar vortex weather wherever else, but just not here in Alabama. It is not my game. I do not like it. I will say it. People, I would much rather have 100 degrees than have 15 degrees any day. I don't care how many gnats or bugs or mosquitoes or whatever. Just bring on those 95-degree days as far as I'm concerned. So, but we did have a tournament last weekend. I don't know if you saw it, but I know a bunch of people did. I'll go ahead and say it. I thought last year, Logan Martin, everybody's frozen. They're all in the house. They're going to be watching. And we did. We had a phenomenal turnout. We had over 11,000 people watch the live on Logan Martin last year. Call it the Guntersville effect, call it the roster effect, call it whatever you want to. But over 13,000 people watched the live from Lake Guntersville. I think right now we're at like 3,900 that have watched the weigh in. It'll track for several more days, I think 28 days to what we'll see, but just a phenomenal event. And we started the morning off catching and we kept going. So I want to talk a lot about that, but congratulations to Matt Adams and Jason Whitehead. They're going to be on in our second segment. They're going to talk about um, the tournament itself, talk about the Alabama Bass Trail 100. Jason's first time fishing the Alabama Bass Trail. You know, he mentioned in a post he had heard all the hype, he had heard the competition, he'd heard all about it, but had never fished it. So we're going to get his opinion as a first time Alabama Bass Trail angler. We're going to talk all about the prize money that they won. Took over $35,000 home from that win on a $1,000 entry fee. Both of them live really close there to Guntersville, so not a whole lot of travel expenses involved, and took home over $35,000. That's $25,000 first place, their boat contingency, their Garmin contingencies, their Pro Guide batteries contingency, and all the things. So we'll talk all about that. But before we do that, I do want to talk about the numbers because as I do with every post-tournament update, I like to give you the lake by the numbers. And that is the bait report that we fill out every tournament that John fills out. We've set our computer software up that it really tracks this, and then allowing our guys at the pump sink to be able to call those 5-pounders too. So that's information we give to the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. John does that every Sunday or Monday, depending on when he gets around to it. But it's always done by Monday so that I have it for the podcast. Again, the winning weight, 28.49. I believe those were all largemouth. I didn't get a chance to see the photo. We had 18 bags that went over 20 pounds. 97 teams fished, and I know it's 100, but understand we have one team that drove to the meeting. They did not anticipate fishing Guntersville even when they signed up. So they didn't fish. We had one team out of Indiana that had 11 inches of ice on their driveway. They could not get their boat down the driveway. They were out. And then we had another team that did not show up on Saturday morning. Not really sure what happened there. Could have been work related. Who knows? Therefore, 97 teams fished. We had 72 limits weighed in, 81 teams weighed in total. That's 19 teams that didn't. It may be that they had 10 pounds, they threw them back, whatever. Um, ABT 100 is a little different. There's no championship. So there's no bonus of getting points for just weighing in. So with that being said, 19 teams and some by lunchtime had said, I'm done, I'm going home. But 81 teams did weigh in, that weighed in at least one bass. 385 bass were caught. 385 were released back into Lake Guntersville. 360 largemouth, 25 spotted bass. The big bass of the tournament was a 768 largemouth. I think Thomas Shelton and Will Colley took home the $1,000 for the big fish. We had 24 fish over 5 pounds, and the total weight weighed in was 1,387.33 pounds. So it took 1976 to get the 20th place check. So 18 bags over 20 pounds. The storyline, I guess, is that we didn't crest that 3202 weight by Brandon Staggs and Jerry Wright. We still have a chance. I mean, we'll be back at Guntersville on March 15th for the regular series. But I think a lot of people thought the way the lake was setting up that this would be the time that we could see that record go down. We also did not see our big bass record of 1036 go down. So it still stands to start the 12th season on the regular series. To have that weight still stand was pretty cool. Over 13,000 people has tuned in to the live on Lake Guntersville, as well as over 3,900, I think, have tuned into the live weigh-in. I want to say something about that because looking back over last year, Logan Martin, of course, nobody was fishing. We averaged around 4,500 people watching live. A couple more tournaments that had, a few more viewers, but 13,000 is a huge step for us. And I contribute a lot of that to Luke and Darian and Jason and to the anglers who are getting a little more used to talking about things that are, not holding back as much. But, and honestly, we saw some guys like cranking traps and like ripping them through the grass and some old school type fishing, which was exciting. I I don't get bored with live scope because someone said it on stage, and I think it was Lynn Johnson actually who said it. You can have live scope, and just because you can see them, and just because you can throw your bait at them, does not mean you're going to catch them. And he said that, and jokingly, Luke talked to him on stage about that. You can have the equipment all day long, but it doesn't mean they're going to bite. And I think some people saw that on Saturday. But it was really cool. We saw Brent Crow and Joe Lucarelli again ripping traps through the grass. We saw that with Lavoyd Lemon and Michael Black. That was their way that they had been fishing. I know Lavoyd, his son, talked to me several times during the week, and they had a very successful practice. But again, I want to talk about that too. Practice was very different than what we saw on Saturday. I got to town late Wednesday afternoon, had a meeting Wednesday night, was at the ramp most of the day on Thursday, and the wind blew 40 miles an hour. It felt like all day long. You couldn't get out of it. But it was bright bluebird sky, tons and tons of wind. Friday, bright bluebird sky and no wind. You couldn't even catch a breeze. And then Friday night starts raining about 7 o'clock, rains through the night, drizzles at blast off, not bad, little bit of drizzle, and then the fog set in. And we saw people catch fish during the fog. So I don't want to hear that fish don't bite during the fog because we saw it. And at 1 o'clock during the day, you couldn't see the other side of the lake from sitting at Goose Pond. That's how thick the fog came in. Totally different day than the practice days. So it was a really weird, just the 3 days, just very, very weird. And of course, Sunday, the temperature started dropping and it is snowing at the beach now. So just a crazy mix of things going on. I don't even know how to explain it, global warming, but I digress. Let's talk a little bit about fishing across the state of Alabama. tournaments are starting. Usually that 3rd to 4th week of January is when we start seeing tournaments start. And the biggest thing I've seen all across social media is looking for a co-angler link. Whether it's the Toyota series, whether it's a BFL, whether it is, I guess BFL and Toyota series because there's no longer links or no longer co-anglers in the opens. I would be interested to hear your thought on why the search for co-anglers is so tough. Is it live scope? Is it forward facing sonar? Is it more people are going to the front of the boat? Is it, it's not that much of a difference in entry fees, or those people didn't just stop fishing. So what is it? There's really not a huge growth in team tournaments, I don't think. Um, we've not seen it, a higher demand in team tournaments. Maybe it is, and I'm just not seeing it. But where did those co-anglers go? They didn't just stop fishing. So is it forward facing sonar? Is it them moving to the front of the boat? Is it that they went to a different format? I don't know. Interesting. I see that post, and I'm not kidding. Like every time I pull up my Facebook, the first 9 or 10 posts are on a board asking for a co-link, or an Instagram post that someone's asking for a co-link. So be interested to hear that. If you've got some ideas or whatever, make a comment on this podcast, or inbox me at Alabama Bass Trail. I'll be glad to talk to you about that and hear your thoughts on it, because I find that pretty interesting. Um, Fishing is, numbers to me seem to be not at an all-time high. I think we were probably there in 21, 22, but I haven't seen it fall off that much. So it'd be interesting to know your thoughts on that. Pickwick, there was 2 tournaments held on Pickwick. I know that Chad Sykes won one, had a little over 18 pounds. I think that one was out of McFarland. And then there was one out of the Mississippi side. I think it took just over 29 pounds to win that event. Saw some pretty smallmouth weighed in. Hope to get to see some of those when we get to Pickwick this year. But, Tennessee River seems to be doing really well. Didn't see any big tournaments on Wheeler this past week. Didn't really even see any Thursday or Friday nighters. So it'd be interesting to see how Wheeler tunes in about the 1st of February. But haven't seen any real results from Smith Lake either. And that's where we're headed next on the Alabama Bass Trail. So I'm keeping my eyes peeled for anything on Smith Lake so I can see how the fishing is going. We're just over a week away. February the 7th is our meeting. February 8th is our tournament. Um, it, it I'm excited. I love Smith in February. I had 5 or 10 spectators at the ABT 100 say, "You realize you got lucky here with weather. Um, you're probably going to get just snockered at Smith." And it could happen. I mean, it's happened before. We've had thunderstorms and the water rise 17 feet. We've had 68-degree Friday and a snowy Saturday morning. We've been flooded out of the park. So we've had it when it came to Smith. Like, I think that's probably the lake that's given us the most curveballs. And in the South, that would be the Alabama River, just because of the water fluctuation down there. But I'm excited to start at Smith Lake. It's a great facility. The volunteers are great, and I can't wait. We'll talk about that in the 3rd segment. I'm getting ahead of myself. But I'll say this, after we came off the water for live, the team kind of got together and we talked about it. And by far, one of our favorite lives, just, it gets a little hard to do when you've got just 97 boats on 64,000 acres. Luckily, it was still kind of cool and you didn't have a ton of recreational traffic. But by the time our guys started coming in at 11, the lake was getting a little more full. So it is hard to track down 97 boats on Lake Guntersville. That's why the trackers are so important. But it was cool. I got to call names out, and I don't know, maybe I had a little spiked punch that morning. I don't know, but I was kind of in a mood, and I got really hyped up on some of the names that we had. But when you look at that field, and you may not know, some of the anglers, but when you look and there's a Russ Lane and there's a Scott Canterbury and there's a Justin Hamner, he's won the biggest tournament in the world in bass fishing. When you see those names, I was the same way when Jordan Lee was fishing with us and Matt Lee was fishing with us and Gerald. Um, Even though Gerald is one of my very best friends. I mean, hands down, one of my best friends. Talked to him yesterday. Uh, he is I, male, my best friend. Leanne, one of my best girlfriends. Like, I love them. But even seeing Gerald's name on our roster makes me a little nervous. Like it makes our team want to do better. And I cannot even say enough about our team. Um, whether it's 25 degrees or 105 degrees, they get after it. And they are absolutely the best people to work alongside that I can. I get emotional when I talk about them because they love this so much. They love what they do so much. And they are not paid what they should be paid. Um, but they do it anyway, and they love it, and they appreciate it, and they know that what we do matters. And so, gosh, the Alabama basketball team, and Luke talked about this on his podcast. Not everywhere you go, you get to work alongside of people that you truly love, that you truly want the best for them, that they truly make you better. And I get to do that every time I go to an Alabama basketball tournament. Nobody wants to do it better than John and Daniel and Todd and Mark and Frank and AJ and Brody and Brennan and Danny and Preston and Luke and Darian and Jason and Kenny and Ben and Jared and Noah and Herbie or Thomas, whoever's there with us at the time, and Angela. Nobody wants it to be better than those guys and gals. And it is so nice to be surrounded by people that are just marching in the same direction. And there's no pulling, there's no power struggle. It's just the coolest thing. It really is. So I'm very thankful for them. I'm very thankful for people like Lydia Pennington, who came out from the Mountain Lakes Chamber of Commerce and spent some time with me on Thursday. She also came back on Saturday to witness our tournament. The great people there at GTO that welcomed us with open arms, that took care of our crew the whole time we were there. When you go into a city and they roll out the red carpet and they treat you like you're the Super Bowl or the college national championship, and that is exactly what these people did. And we have a number of host cities that do that. It it's refreshing to know that they understand the value of fishing tourism and recreational sport tourism, and that they embrace it and that they support it. So thank you to the Mountain Lakes Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Lydia, for coming out, spending time with me, letting me educate you about the Alabama Bass Trail, tell you my funny stories about the Alabama Bass Trail, and hopefully you now know why I love it as much as I do. So, but all in all, just looking through social media, I haven't seen a whole lot in South Alabama as far as tournaments go. I know they're getting started. I've talked with a lot of the host cities down there that are working with tournament organizers. We are still battling the Coosa River slot limit, and I say battling. We're still there. We're still talking, and we're still having dialogue. So my hope is that we will start having those stakeholder meetings soon, and that we will know. Kind of where we are, what position we're going to be in as we start announcing the 2026 schedules and things like that. Um, it's, you know, we'll see. I don't really have an opinion. I don't, an opinion that I haven't already expressed. I don't have an opinion of where we are in the fight. I know there are a lot of people that are working on behalf of what we believe. And I know there are people that are working on behalf of what the Department of Conservation believes. So you can go out to the YouTube and you can find YouTube's done by John Cruz. There's a new YouTube done by another gentleman who talks about the study and the white papers that he received, and he breaks it down. And So you have a lot of information out there. But so far we don't have really any communication from the department as to when the stakeholders meetings will be. So hopefully we'll know that soon. Certainly I'll pass it along to you guys as we can. So, but I am going to take a break right now. We're going to get Matt Adams and Jason Whitehead in with us. We're going to talk about their win, talk about, Matt's fished the opens this past year in 2024, was the first man out of the cut, finished 10th. They took 9. I don't want to harp on that because I know Luke talked about it on the stage, and I know that he talked about it on our TV wrap up. But I am a big proponent of knowing where you came from, knowing those struggles of getting to where you are. So I have a feeling that Matt uses that as his motivation for this year. He had a phenomenal year on the opens last year, came up a little short, had the fish on. We watched him, at Lake Martin, had the fish on to make a difference, didn't work out. But I have a feeling that he's using that to drive him this year. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I don't want to hound on that because it's not like he doesn't know it. It's not like he hasn't heard that tagline before. So we're going to talk about it a little bit, and then we're going to move on to Jason's first tournament with Alabama Bass Trail 100, talk about his experience, an open, honest reflection of that. I'm going to allow him to be totally open and honest about that. We're going to talk about the tournament, talk about how they caught him, and how they plan on spending $35,000. I mean, I could do it. I'm going to be real honest with you. I could do it, and it wouldn't take me very long. So, but we'll be back in just a minute, and you're watching and listening to the Alabama Bass Trail Podcast presented by Phoenix Boats. Y'all are going to want to stay tuned.
It's the moment when everything is on the line and precision, power, and control make all the difference. A moment over 20 years in the making, anchored on loyalty, trust, and support that goes beyond all expectations. A relentless pursuit of perfection. All born from a revolutionary idea to help you rule the water. Power Pole.
Welcome back to the Alabama Bass Trail Podcast presented by Phoenix Boats. And as I promised in the first segment, your winners of the first ABT 100 on Lake Guntersville, Matt Adams and Jason Whitehead. Welcome to the Alabama Bass Trail Podcast, guys.
Hey.
I mean, we're going to get into it, but I mean, Jason or Matt, have you had any time to just sit down since you left Lake Guntersville on Saturday?
No, ma'am. It's straight to Clarks Hill, and weather here is not too pretty. Like we discussed, it's almost like Alabama Bass Trail weather over here right now. So, no, haven't had a chance. We get an off day tomorrow with a bunch of snow on the ground. So,
yeah. Hey, how about I'm glad it's y'all and not me this time. So, we did skirt the weather with this one. So, as bad as I hate cold weather, it was not Logan Martin cold. So I was okay with it. I got to ask before, Jason, how has your phone been? I know it rang a couple times during us wrapping up the TV show, but how has it been since Saturday? How's your phone been?
Oh, it hadn't quit. My phone ain't quit ringing. Text messages on Facebook from everybody. I mean, around the lake, with me being a guide, I've met a lot of people and fortunate enough to make a lot of friends and clients and stuff. And it literally, I mean, it hasn't stopped. I mean, I still got 2 right now that actually just come through just a minute ago. So it's been overwhelming, to say the least.
Well, I know you mentioned in a Facebook post when you talked about the win that you've been around and you've known about the Alabama Bass Trail. You've never fished it before. You've heard about the competition. I mean, you get in the boat and there's Bassmaster Classic champion Justin Hamner in the boat next to you or whatever. Talk about your experience. And I told you off air, and I'm telling you now, I want an honest opinion of what your first experience on the Alabama Bass Trail was like.
So a lot of the tour that I grew up fishing, which is over in Georgia, a lot of those guys started fishing ABT, and I'm talking 5, 6, 10 years ago. And they always said it's the most well-run, organized. They get you through from boat check to weigh-in to everything just flows. And to be able to experience that was just, I mean, everything from boat check to weigh-in to afterwards, and even prior to the tournament and the meeting and the schedule and communication. I mean, everything was just, it was as clear as a bell from front to back. There was nothing was disorganized. I mean, it ran as smooth as any tournament I've ever been associated with or fished.
Well, I told you before we started recording, like I actually talked about this in the first segment that you guys don't get to see until it goes up tomorrow. But I got emotional about our team because we have done this in 14-degree weather, and we've done this in 115-degree weather last year at Lake Eufaula. And the guys don't make as much money as I wish I could pay them, but they come back every year. And when they close that door up at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, after they've been there since 3 o'clock in the morning, and they close it up at 8 o'clock and they're still smiling and they're laughing and they're cutting up, it is the most amazing group of people to be around, that absolutely love it and know that they're making a difference. It's just the coolest thing to be around. A lot of us can go to work and not get along with our coworker and feel like we're in competition, and there's just none of that when it comes to our team. And that's what I love about working with them so much. They are just a dream to work with, and know
Absolutely.
the time that John and Daniel put into things is just really cool. So I'm glad that your experience was great. Hopefully we can keep that up, for you at Lake Eufaula. But let's talk about the tournament. Okay, so it was announced in March of last year. Matt, you had to wait until the 11th, right, to register because you had a new team, a new partner. So you got in on the 11th, because it didn't last very long after that. So got in on the 11th. Thought process in from June until January. What was kind of the excitement or dread, or what was it?
I think, Jason and I, we've known each other for a while, been in the boat together a few times, but both have experienced different levels of success on Guntersville. And then when the tournament come out, and we looked at Guntersville first, and we're like, "Ooh, that's going to be a good one for both of us."
Mhm.
It's just the time of year we really like to do the things that we like to do. That time of year, it's set up really well. He has a lot of experience on Eufaula, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Mhm.
I think Jason actually lived there. He can comment on there. Had a lake house there, and I have a lot of experience on Wilson. So it was kind of like this fit really well for both of us. And then I relocated to Guntersville, so now it allows us to get in the boat together a lot more than when I was living in Oxford. So
Okay.
just kind of everything fell together.
Okay. Jason, what's your experience in team tournaments? Have you fished a lot of team tournaments before?
So I fished some that trail that I mentioned, that was over in Georgia. So I was in a retail sales industry for 13 years before I actually, went through COVID and decided to get my captain's license and become a guide. With being in retail, I didn't get the opportunity to fish on Saturdays, which is why I
Yeah.
didn't ever have the opportunity to fish with you guys. So there were so
Yeah.
many trails that I couldn't get to fish, but I did fish one, that was in Georgia. And then, of course, a lot of the open team tournaments that are around Guntersville, or if they're within driving distance, Logan Martin. I think there's quite a few other tournaments and charity tournaments and stuff like that that are team events that I'll jump in the boat with somebody and go down and fish.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about practice, because honestly, if you practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you had 3 totally different days. Like Thursday, the wind blew 40 miles an hour, it felt like, and it was everywhere. Like you just could not get out of it. Friday, bluebird skies and no wind. You couldn't catch a breeze anywhere you went. So talk about practice. Um, did it help or did it hurt? Obviously, it didn't hurt because I mean you won. So
It
Jason, you want to do it?
was practice was different. I mean, the communication that Matt and I had was great. I still ran guide trips all week. So
mhm.
there was only one day that I actually had. So what I did was I would run my guide trips, and then I would have an hour or two to go out and look around and scan and just check some areas. And Matt and I would talk about, okay, where have you checked here? Have you looked there? Have you looked here? And just kind of ping pong between the two of us. And we just covered as much water as we absolutely could within a couple of days. But my actually practice time was very limited. I only had Thursday was the one day that I'd actually blocked, and that's the day that you said, I mean, it was blowing
Mm-hmm.
real bad. We had water coming over the front of the boat, and it's like, okay, we got to at least figure out a couple and just make sure that these few schools of fish that we had found were still there, which we did. And then we just kind of went searching and hope that the wind wouldn't blow like that on Saturday, because that was rough.
Well, boat number really doesn't help you in the 100s because you had, I think, boat number 43. So you're about middle of the pack, but there's not a big advantage of being able to fish a lot longer. So were you worried about boat number at all? Because you're talking about getting to those one or two schools of fish. Were you worried about that at all, Matt?
One of those schools of
Oh,
fish was so large that, yes, that was discussed. And it's like, man, I hope we can get on them and nobody finds it. So while I'm out running guide trips, which were mostly crappie fishing, so it wasn't like we were bass fishing and I could
yeah.
come across, these are crappie fishing trips. So I kind of kept an eye on that area as I was driving by, and we were running, waypoint to waypoint on those guided crappie trips, and I never saw a boat sitting there. So I saw Mattis, man. I said, I could have missed them. Somebody could have scanned across. Fortunately, I mean, we were pulled up there on it, but yes, we did discuss that. It's like, man, if somebody found them, I mean, we got one or two schools. I feel like the way that we're catching them, and can catch them, and our abilities with the big bait in our hand will be just fine. So
Okay.
we had a little backup plan, but it didn't affect us.
Okay. So how many spots, Matt, did y'all go to?
We had three main spots. So when Jason actually found the school of fish that we went to first, he found them scanning for crappie on a guide trip. And so we both kind of kept an eye on that area because it is a very well-known area, but the spot of where the fish was set up is not something that you couldn't just use your graph and figure it out. Like, you had to know they're normally there. These fish were so tight to the bottom that even with your Ford, it was very difficult to even tell that they were set up there. So from there, I found another area that was within eyesight that on Friday was incredible. But we had calmer day and sun, and they were set up well. Jason had a spot that it couldn't have been a quarter mile. So those were the three main areas. We didn't, the thing about the ABT is that these guys are so good, especially the 100. They're so good that the more you bounce around and the more you pull your trolling motor up, you're going to get in a bad rotation. If you start running around, you are going to get behind somebody. And look, I've got a lot of confidence in Jason. I catching him, but I don't want to get behind Justin Hamner. I don't want to get behind Scott Canterbury. I don't want to get behind guys like that. So
Yeah.
we figured out, the more that we could stay in one general area and keep our trolling motor in the water, the better off we're going to be. And really, I think we upgraded at about 9:30, 10 o'clock on our third spot. And that put us where we were. And then from there, we kind of ran history, just trying to, because I mean, like we talked about at the tournament, upgrading on a 28-pound bag is difficult. And so we felt like we even ran back to our first spot, and we broke the school up pretty bad. And I don't know so much if it was the school or if it was the weather. I think they bit right off the bat, and with the cloud cover, I just don't think they ever grew back up. So, but in three main areas to answer your question, and then we ran 20 different spots, caught fish at all of them. We just never could upgrade after that.
I think I read somewhere where you said you probably caught 30 or 40 fish during the day.
Every bit of it.
Every bit of it.
Every bit of it. And actually left a couple spots we let fish biting just because it wasn't the quality that we needed to see.
Okay. I read in the story that you were using a swim bait. You want to talk a little bit about that, Jason? How I made a note here that you said they were so close to the bottom. So how deep is bottom where you're fishing?
Anywhere from 18 to 24 foot.
Okay.
Some of them were a little bit shallower, but that 18 to 24 foot was pretty much where the larger school was. Now, one of the bigger ones, that other 6'7" or 6'8" that we had, it came from deeper water. I think a boat was sitting at 30, 31, 32 when we caught that one.
Okay.
The swim bait, so we had two different swim baits that we ran. There was one that was smaller, and I actually have two of the bigger ones right here, but one of them was the smaller size. That one was the one that we could really cast around and locate fish. Like, we could work that bait quicker because they would group up on the bottom. And like Matt was saying, if your electronics weren't 100% dialed, You would never see them on side scan. You could barely see them on down scan. And even with the live scope, all you saw was something that looked irregular. It wasn't like, oh, that's a fish. It wasn't
Mhm.
like, I mean, they were so tight to the bottom. So what we did was we took a smaller swim bait, put a heavier head on it, and we were able to like basically burn it and get that fish's reaction, get them to show themselves, show that they're a fish, cover water. And then we took the big bait and threw it right there over them, and it was pretty awesome.
So I've always been told on all lakes, but especially Guntersville, you want to go with that bigger bait, bigger profile. You said you have them there. Are you willing to show us the baits that
Yeah,
you're
I'll show
talking
one of
about?
them. So
Okay.
this is one. It's a 1/2 ounce, but that's a 6 cents whale. Which I noticed, some other anglers and stuff were throwing swim baits also, but that's the 6 cents whale.
Okay.
This one's rig weedless, so it comes through the grass a little bit better, but
Okay.
it's got a really good shimmy to it. And it's full. I mean, you see, it's full size, and then that color
Okay.
just matches up with one of those gizzards or thread fin really well.
Okay.
The weedless, you can throw it through the grass because some of that even offshore, there's still grass out there,
Right.
14, 12, 14, 16 foot.
Right.
We could kind of get that going, but yeah, we threw that smaller size. I think it was a Divine, a 6 cents Divine 3.2, and we put like a 3/4 ounce head on a little swim bait, and we could burn it just to get the fish to react, kind of show themselves, and then take that big bait right there and reel it right over their head, and they crush it.
Okay. Matt, did you say you had your limit that you weighed in between 9:30 and 10 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, it was on our third stop. I'm estimating at 9:30, 10 o'clock, and and here I am talking about. I heard the talk before the record was 32 pounds, and you're sitting there at 28, and we had two that I really felt with what we'd seen that morning. I'm like, we can get rid of these two and really challenge that 32-pound bag, especially with all the time we had left. And it just seemed like it just, as much as I'd love to say it didn't come together, it did. But we didn't feel like we had enough at 28, 28 and a quarter. Jason and I talked beforehand. I thought it was going to take that record to win. That's how good the lake has been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been watching it all fall, and I shouldn't do that because every time I do that, it always bites me right in the butt. Not that I am not so proud of a 28.49 bag. Don't get me wrong. But I felt like watching throughout the fall, certainly the end of October, November, December, that we were on track to have that 33, 34-pound bag. We've had multiple 30-pound bags. We just never have gotten close. And for that to have been the first tournament ever in Alabama Bass Trail history, and to know the story of Brandon and Jerry getting in because Jordan Lee had to back out because of the open schedule, it was just a really cool story. And then, how
Yeah.
they spent their money and all that. So, but one thing that y'all got that they didn't get is y'all took home over $35,000 with your boat contingency and ABT money. Not a bad payday for $1,000 entry fee. And a one-time event. You both live at Guntersville, so you didn't have a ton of expenses on this tournament. So you got Pro Guide batteries, you had Garmin. So a lot of the partners that partner with Alabama Bass Trail paid you guys back as well.
Oh, absolutely. And some of the partners, Pro Guide batteries, you mentioned, Jason talked about the clarity of the graphs and the way they were locked in, and that plays a big part. But I just think that that's what makes ABT so good. Is I know you guys run a great event, but the sponsors and the partners you have behind it as well, the products they provide. Jason and I use a lot of them, and it's a really good fit. It's a really good match, and those bonuses are nice too.
Yeah, it's always fun when you get that extra 500 or extra $1,000. Your
That's
buddy
right.
Thomas Shelton took home an extra $2,000 from Amherst. He wanted one of those trophies so bad. He kept coming up asking me, "Is you give 3 trophies, right? 3 trophies." So, but they had an awesome day too to see the smiles on their face when they came across the stage. He said he caught his personal best twice. How cool is that to be able to share that experience with a really good friend of yours like Thomas?
He People don't realize how good of a person he is. He's so giving. He's so active in the community. And to see where he started, Thomas and I fished together a lot. And we'd fished the ABT 100 a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't know if he's going to fish this year. And when he didn't know if he's going to fish, I got with Jason and said, "Hey, I'm gonna live in Guntersville. Let's go." And then he decided to jump in with Will. But to see him go out and do what he did is a testament to how much he's grown as a fisherman. But behind the fisherman, I'm telling you, like, people don't understand how good of a person he is. He is top notch. great in the community, great in the fishing community, always giving back. He deserves that. And I'm really, really proud. I was probably as proud for him as I was for us.
Well, I got to ask about another guy that always comments on your post. He always shares your post. He used to be an ABT guy. How are we going to get Chris Wages back on the Alabama Bass Trail?
Oh, no, another good friend of mine. Well, Chris has got to stop working so much and being in the gym. He's embarrassing me. He used to be one of us. One of me. He's a fat person. He's living at the table, and he decided, oh, I'm gonna get back in the gym and look good and put all my time there. And he's put his bass rods, his bass boat away. Um, I don't know. I know he just bought a house and kind of settled a little bit, so we may see him back going. I think he may be fishing a BFL, so I'd say his entry back into ABT it's probably coming.
I saw that. I almost commented that I was offended that he was looking for a link in the BFLs, but I'm not.
Get
Chris is
on
a
him.
great. Hey, Chris is a great guy. I have to say, I've
Wonderful.
gotten to know him, the last few years, and I think he's a great guy. But I did see that, and I was a little offended by it. So I hope he listens to this podcast. Jason, let's talk about Lake Eufaula. We said this is probably one of the downturns of the Alabama Bass Trail 100 is you fish in January, you get all hyped up, you get a win, leading angler of the year points. There's only 3 events. Like you really can't boo up in the ABT and take home the angler of the year belts. So go into Eufaula. You've got some experience there. But there's a big bear down there with Shane Powell and Tim Fox in a June tournament. Let's talk about it. How
So
excited are you to go down there?
oh yeah, that's like a homecoming for me. When Matt called me, he's like, "Hey man," he said, "Do you want to fish the 100s?" I'm like, "What's the schedule?" And he goes, "Guntersville, and then we go to Eufaula." And I'm like, "Sign me up." Just okay, I'm in. So my dad actually bought a lake house on Eufaula when I was 11 years old. We spent every single weekend. It didn't matter, spring, summer, fall, winter. We were there every weekend. That was our getaway, and we kept it for almost 15 years, and we were there every single weekend. Um, it's just like a homecoming. Like I feel like I know the lake pretty well. It has changed a lot the last couple of years, and I've fished quite a few tournaments down there in the last couple of years. But man, it's just like a homecoming. Like I get excited just thinking about it, hooking the boat up, and being able to drive back down to the lake that I learned to fish on.
Yeah.
And then go back down. It's exciting. I'm ready to go.
It's a good body of water. I like Lake Eufaula. I love the whole setup. It's real convenient for us. It's been a great lake for us in the past. Shane Powell has kind of dominated a couple of times when we've been down there in the summer. Did not have a great finish this past year, but I know he's got to be looking forward to that. I think it's the absolute only reason that he signed up. Matt, you said you've got some experience on Wilson. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
That's Dude, that's going to be a fun smallmouth bite. I hope we get to see a lot of smallmouth. We did not see one smallmouth weighed in on Guntersville this past weekend.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to play, especially that time of year. I am excited about our boat number. I told Jason, being where we were, and I going in, and I was trying to remember. I said, I think we move up 33. So whenever you said it at the meeting, I'm nudging him, saying, "See, I told you." So
Yeah.
that's going to put us as boat number 9.
Okay.
And Wilson is very spot oriented. It's very much a boat number bingo. And so it kind of lined up the way that I'm like, okay, there's a couple of key areas that time of year. Obviously smallmouth are definitely going to play. Might even see a big bait in that one too. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm excited. We've never been to Wilson. I've seen some smaller tournaments held there, and I've seen some high school tournaments held there. November, I love it. It typically does play for a smallmouth bite. It's a tiny pond. Now, it's not
It is.
Lake Jordan tiny. And for 100, I think it'll be perfect. But I'm really excited about being at Wilson Lake and finishing out the season there. Last year it took an average place of 13th to win Angler of the Year. When you consider that Zeke Gossett and Nathan King had a second place at Logan Martin, they win Weiss and still didn't win the Angler of the Year at Wheeler. I don't know that a team's had a better year than those guys, other than the first year of the team that won the Angler of the Year. But 13th place average to be able to bring home that Angler of the Year belt. It's been anywhere from a 5th place average to a 13th place average. You've got some big shoes to fill, but the good thing is you are in the lead right now. So that's saying something. And you got over $35,000 to comfort you uh, to
That's
this
right.
next couple of weeks. So, yeah, I know you're at Clarks Hill. Jason, anything coming up for you in the tournament world, or just back to guiding?
I may jump in the BFL. I know I'm going to fish the ABA Solo 150 coming up on Guntersville. I think it's the first weekend in March.
Okay.
There's a handful of other tournaments that are around the lake. I may jump in from time to time, but this year I'm gonna stay local. I'm not going to travel. Last year I traveled around, fished the Toyotas a little bit. I have every opportunity to do it again this year, but I'm going to focus more on the guide business and stay local, and whatever's in driving distance, I may just jump in it.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, thank y'all for taking some time. Matt, go warm up, get some dinner,
Yes, ma'am.
and good luck this week on Clarks Hill, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I always want to say Hartwell. I guess every time people go over that way, I think they're going to Hartwell because Neil Paul hosts every event you can possibly host over there. So, but Clarks Hill, that'll be an interesting start for you guys over there.
Yeah, it's more like the Arctic right now, and I'm just trying to survive this one and get to Bigby and the Upper Chesapeake. So
Good deal. Well, there you go, guys. Your 2025 Alabama Bass Trail 100 winners, Matt Adams and Jason Whitehead, took home over $35,000 and did it with 28.49 pounds. Congratulations again, and thank y'all for taking time with me.
Research and development is more than just time in the shop for us. It's time out here, sweating the details, making boats that work as well in the real world as they do on paper. From our R&D team to our anglers on the water, we have the knowledge and passion to build you the finest fishing platform in the world.
Welcome back to the third and final segment of today's podcast. I want to thank again Matt Adams and Jason Whitehead for being with me. I mean, typically we record this on Monday, and immediately Matt left to go for the Open, and so we were worried about even getting in the podcast, but he was very gracious to set aside some time for us. Unfortunately, we didn't get to do it on Monday, but you got to hear it today. What an exciting time to be on Lake Guntersville, period, end of discussion. The lake is phenomenal. Not that it needs any more bragging about it. It is probably the most written about lake in the state of Alabama, if not the country. It is probably the most storied. There's probably been more riders hosted on that lake than anywhere else in the United States for sure. So it is a magical time. Congratulations to them again. Took over $35,000 on a one-day tournament on $1,000 entry fee for that event. So congratulations again to them. I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, 18 days until we get to Smith Lake. February the 8th, takeoff will be around 7:00. We'll do another 4.5, 5 hours of live coverage on Smith Lake. Looking forward to that. We'll have trackers on about 45 boats. Get out there and get after it on Smith Lake, looking for largemouth and spotted bass. We know that there is a slot limit, so we'll be looking for those that are over 15 inches. You can weigh in unders, but you're not going to win with those, so you're going to be looking for those overs. So 18 days, 31 days, and we will be at beautiful Lake Martin, starting the year off. You can say this, Anthony Goggins, CJ Knight, they said it on the Best Of show, and if you didn't watch it, go back and watch it on YouTube. The year they start at Lake Martin is not their year. So we'll see. Can they back up their AOY title starting at Lake Martin? Be interesting to see. We're going to have a camera on them. They're your anglers of the year. So we got to do that. 32 days, Lake Martin and Alexander City. Just talked to Sandra Fuller earlier today. She's going to be our host down there at Tallapoosa Tourism. So looking forward to that. But until then, guys, busy. There's boat shows. We are not going to be at the East Tennessee show this week. We were originally scheduled to be there, but there's just too much going on. We can't get there. But we have fishing tournaments, and we have the Bassmaster Classic to get ready for. We have lots of other things going on, lots of planning things going on, working with some of our partners on things. So lots of things going on in the fishing season. So I don't want to hold you up anymore. I do want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for sharing. Our views are getting more. Our listens are getting more on our podcasting app. So thank you for sharing. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcasting app. And again, continue to share it with your friends so that we continue to grow our fishing fanatics and fishing audience. We want everybody to hear the great word on Alabama, so make sure that you are sharing it. Also, remember, take time to hug your loved ones. Snuggle up your fur babies. Go out and pet your horses. You know, if you've got those many cows, I know that's going crazy everywhere. Enjoy your fur babies. You are their life. So, and enjoy the things that bring you peace. We all need a little bit more of that. So enjoy all those things. And until next week, thank you for listening to the Alabama Bass Trail Podcast presented by Phoenix Boats. We will be back next week and we'll preview Smith Lake. Y'all have a great evening and peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Alabama Bass Trail Podcast. To learn more about the Alabama Bass Trail, make sure and visit alabamabasstrail.org.